All right, we can get started. So, as I mentioned, thanks again for joining us on this wonderful sunny afternoon. I just want to give everyone a heads up that this presentation is being recorded. So if you want to reference anything, any information that Bergen is sharing afterwards, we will have the link available. So you can just email the ACE staff upon request. So now to introduce Bergen. Bergen here is a fourth year student at OHSU Medical School in the surgical program. And she's going to be sharing her journey to medical school and in medical school and everything you need to know about careers in medicine. So Bergen, take it away.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I've talked about this before for Saturday Academy. And I think it's always really fun to kind of hear about where all you are coming from in terms of why you were interested in this particular talk. So I will move forward with my slides if I can. A little bit of the agenda. I want to hear a little bit from all of you, and then I'm just going to kind of talk about careers in medicine in general, and then it'll be a little bit skewed towards what I'm doing, which is a Doctor of Medicine degree and going into surgery. But I can also kind of talk about some of the other areas in the medical field since I interact with them so much. So if you want to put in the chat or unmute and kind of tell me your name, maybe your grade in school, maybe where you're from, and then kind of why you were interested in this talk, that would be awesome.
Okay, if we just unmute and say it instead, or does it have to be in the chat?
Absolutely, you can unmute.
Okay, my name is Tanush Sisla. I'm a sophomore at Lincoln High School. I was mainly interested in this because I'm interested in general in the medical field, and I have an internship at Dornbecker right now. So, I mean, it seems like a good thing to pursue and learn more about.
Cool, thanks for sharing. Okay, so it looks like we have someone in the chat who's interested in biomedicine. That's cool. That's very sciencey. Does anybody else want to unmute and share? Okay, that's okay. Maybe we'll get a little bit less shy as we move forward. Okay, Madeline. Yeah. It's medicine is a very long process and it just keeps going on the longer I'm in it. Okay. 12 people, 3 students. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so it sounds like we have a lot of kind of like older high school kind of level students. That's great. It's helpful for me to know kind of the audience that I'm talking to. Great. Yeah, I think a lot of when I was a senior in high school or junior in high school, I definitely did not really know like kind of where in medicine I was interested in or even where in science. I was just sort of interested in, yeah, science and medicine. Okay, thank you all for sharing. So just a few things kind of really briefly talking about careers in medicine, you can do a doctorate degree, which is 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of medical school, and then a residency program, which is going to be 3 to 6 years. But there are a lot of other options, and I feel like people didn't necessarily talk to me about this quite as much. So you can do nursing, which will be 4 years or 6 years, and then you can go on and get advanced nursing degrees and be like an independent practitioner. Same with physician assistant, that's a master's degree, so 2 years after an undergraduate degree. I have quite a few friends that are going into PA school right now, and they really love it. And PA school is really cool because you get to switch your specialty around throughout your career, and you can't really do that as a physician. So that is a really excellent option. Not quite as much education commitment there either. But then there are a lot of other roles as well. There are medical assistants, there are nursing assistants, there are, so CRNAs are nurses who then go to school for anesthesia. And then they essentially are functioning as anesthesiologists. And that's a really cool job. Then there are a lot of technician programs as well. So I'm a medical student, so obviously I have a bias towards why choosing to get an MD versus these other things. It really is just kind of about your foundation of learning. So you spend a lot more time learning about why diseases happen, and specifically like diagnostics and kind of working up different diseases and really being the like leader of the healthcare team, rather than like a PA will see somebody and they'll have a complaint, and their education is based on how to treat that complaint. And doctors spend a lot more time learning about physiology and what's going on, and sort of like what questions do we need to ask to really diagnose this problem, rather than how do we treat this symptom that's going on right at this time. That's a little bit kind of like in the weeds of specifics, but it is why doctors spend a lot more time in training, both in school and in training. But that's also why if you are going and getting a Doctor of Medicine degree and going to residency, you are picking one specialty, and for the most part, that's going to be the specialty for the rest of your career, which is a lot of pressure to decide, and it's not a lot of flexibility. There are people who will kind of go back and do a new residency. That's not very common, but it does happen. And I think people ultimately are really happy with their choices when they do choose to switch, because they're switching for a really good reason. So then just talking a little bit about what residency is. So you do 4 years of medical school, which is just general medicine. Everyone does basically the same thing until your kind of 3rd and 4th years, where you choose your own electives. And then after, you pick a residency to apply to, and there are so many. I learn about new ones all the time. Like you can be a medical geneticist, but I think you can also do that through a master's degree. So there's so many different routes you can take out of medical school. And I just listed some of them here. And it really ranges anywhere from, you can do a 3-year family medicine residency and be a primary care doctor, to you can spend 7 to 8 years in neurosurgery to do brain surgery. Those are very different jobs. They look very different on the day-to-day. So I think that's a really cool thing about medical school, is the options are just very, very wide. So kind of things that you all can be doing now if you're interested in the field is to shadow. Shadow doctors, shadow a PA, shadow whoever you can, just to kind of learn about the medical field and what you like or don't like about it. You can also think about what you want to major in college. Technically, there are like specific majors that you need to apply to medical school, but if you do like biology or biochemistry, those are helpful in terms of learning information before medical school that's going to be in medical school and on your boards. I majored in biology and public health. So I kind of did a combination and I thought that that was really excellent. Another note is like, when you apply to medical school, you talk about all the different things that you've done, like volunteering and research and whatnot, but anything that you are doing in high school isn't going to be included on that application. So now isn't really the time to be spending just like a ton of time on that kind of thing. And then just some notes for kind of when you're in college. You can really do whatever you want. Get involved with something, whether it's a club or a group. Just have some extracurriculars that you enjoy. Make sure that you can adjust to getting good grades because your GPA is not ever going to be able to be changed. And so you don't want that to be starting out really low because you spread yourself too thin, trying to do extracurriculars because the GPA is really important. And most people now, I put here 1 to 3 years between medical school, between college and medical school. I took 1 year. I would say it's moving more towards 2 to 4. Just more people are taking more time off. So kind of focus on that GPA while you're in college, and then you can kind of fill in those extracurricular type things after as well. You have to take the MCAT. It's fine. It's just the beginning of a lot of long standardized tests that you'll have to take if you go into medicine. So you just study for it and then you'll do great. The application process is very lengthy. It takes like over a year and it costs a lot of money. So you want to be kind of in your best place when you do apply. I've heard of students kind of testing out what it would look like to apply and spending a lot of money rather than just applying when they have a very solid CV. And so I would not recommend applying until you're very ready. Things that look really good on an application are research, tutoring or teaching, volunteering, whether it's medical or not. Shadowing, you need to show that you've had some experience in the field. You can also get a certificate and scribe or be a medical assistant or a CRNA or a CNA, sorry. I think scribing is a good way to learn about kind of what the medical providers are doing. As a medical assistant or a CNA, you're not actually seeing like what a doctor is doing or what kind of decisions they're needing to make. Whereas as a scribe, you're going to see more of that. I did some scribing. I think that it's not necessarily something you want to spend a ton of time doing. It's very repetitive. But I think that my efficiency compared to some of my classmates who were not scribes in terms of writing notes it's definitely a benefit. I definitely am very efficient, and that helps me get home earlier, which is really nice. But yeah, just I think have fun. Don't miss out on too much. Make sure that you are doing the hobbies that you like to do before worrying about too many other things, especially now. So most of this is for you to ask questions. That was like a very broad overview and probably more information that you wanted, but I'm happy to answer questions about whatever. I can try and answer things about non-MD specific, but those will be a little bit more limited answers.
I want to save some space if any of our interns have any questions for you. I want to make sure those get answered, but I do have some panel style questions for Bergen that we can move to. So what was your aha moment that made you want to commit to medicine, Bergen?
I don't think I had an aha moment. I think it was more of a gradual realization. I think I decided I was going to go into medicine, and I kind of stuck with that plan. But exactly where I fit in was not exactly like an aha moment. I think it was probably later when I realized kind of what my specialty would be. And then it was probably an aha moment, a little bit of like, oh, I could never do a different job than this. And I think that happened maybe in my third year of medical school. So I put a lot of time and work in before I felt very confident that it was exactly what I wanted to do.
So before you felt that level of confidence, was there other career paths that you had thought about or considered, or was it always sort of medicine?
Yeah, I explored kind of public health related fields in college. And I ultimately decided that I wanted to work with people. And it felt like being a physician was still going to be the most people-centric career I could go into, just in terms of like building relationships with people and kind of just the level of intimacy you have as a physician rather than like health policy. I don't really love working on computers. And so I just wanted to do something where I was mostly interacting with people during the day. And I think that like I did a lot of research in college. And so I also thought about a research career. I thought about kind of mixing medicine and research. There are these 8-year programs that are an MD, PhD, which I considered. And then that's so much school. And I am so glad that I'm not doing that because I am very much ready to graduate and move on from school. After 8 years, I can't imagine doing 12. But it also just didn't fit with my career goals of like, I don't want to run a lab. I don't want to be committing a lot of time to research. I think if research is something you're interested in, you can do research with just an MD. Absolutely. You do not have to pursue additional graduate degrees. But if you want to run your own lab at a medical school, at like a teaching hospital, and maybe see patients once a week, then maybe the MD PhD program is something for you.
So shifting gears a little bit, is there anything that maybe you would have done differently along your path?
Yeah, I think I would have explored different clinical roles. Like, I would have shadowed a PA, a physician's assistant. I would have maybe asked a few more questions about kind of the specifics of each role in the healthcare field. I think that like nursing could have been a really great place for me. But I guess I didn't fully understand like the differences between nursing and like being a doctor. You get to be a really strong patient advocate as a nurse, that I don't think you quite get to do as a doctor. I mean, you get to advocate for your patients, but it's in a different way.
Interesting. You hear that, interns asking questions, all of the things that you should still already be doing. That's great. Can you talk about maybe sort of the most impactful things that you did? I know we have to sort of start in undergrad because that's when medical school applications sort of begin considering your CV. What the most impactful things you did in undergrad that sort of helped you or impacted you or sort of propelled you forward?
Yeah, I had a really excellent research mentor. As part of my undergraduate degree, I had to do an honors thesis project. And so I kind of was, I mean, I had to graduate, I had to find a research mentor. I would encourage anyone to do that, even if they don't have that as like a requirement as part of their degree. But that was just a really great way to apply the science that I was learning and kind of establish relationships with people who could help me make decisions about my future professional goals. And I think the other part of it that ultimately was really helpful was I did a lot of presentations and poster presentations and publications. And those things are now even really helpful to me as I'm applying to residency programs. And so I think part of it is doing research and getting experience is good. Getting paid to do that is like the next, you should get paid to do everything. And then the next step on that is you should be presenting and publishing your research. Because there are a lot of situations where just like the experience on a CV is not, you need to show that you completed a project. And so I think the mentor that I had in that department was just really great at making sure I completed projects, which I'm very thankful for, because I know a lot of people who did research and have like very little to be able to like show that they've completed projects to have on their CV. I think other things that I did is I just think I had a very well-rounded application to medical school. I did a lot of tutoring, and I was a teaching assistant, and I volunteered at a free medical clinic for a few years, and that was really impactful, both for me and my learning of just the world, but also for my applications. What else did I do? I think that those three are kind of the main three.
So many of our interns right now are with research-based mentors. How did you develop a relationship with your mentor that you could voice that you wanted to do publications, or you wanted to have sort of a deliverable, or how did you build that relationship so that you could have a network with them that helped you to this day?
Yeah, I think part of it was starting early. I started research in my freshman year of college, to kind of give myself that time to build skills, to be able to kind of finish projects. But I also think that sort of establishing, I established my goal was that I wanted to get into medical school kind of from the beginning. And if you have a good mentor, they will know that that's not an easy thing and that you need to be able to demonstrate a lot of skills. So in some ways I got lucky that my mentor just understood that. And I think that since then, I've had mentors who do understand that, and I've had mentors who don't understand that. And so I think kind of learning what you're going to be able to get out of a relationship, and kind of learning from past relationships, and then being able to be more assertive in future ones. But definitely asserting like what your goals are is really important, but also time and working hard and showing initiative.
Definitely. So a little bit of a deeper question for you. You talk a lot about GPA and how important that is. So do you think that where somebody goes for undergrad has a big impact on their path towards medicine? So for example, going to a school that maybe has a reputation for being able to get a higher GPA, but maybe not as prestigious of a name of a school, as opposed to a school that is a little bit more prestigious, but it's a little bit tougher to get that GPA higher. Do you have a perspective on that?
That's a good question. That's kind of a tough question. I think well, I would say I have two things to say. The first would be, you want to go to a school that's going to encourage undergraduate involvement in things. Like, I knew I wanted to do research. And so when I was deciding on a college, I was looking at kind of like an in-state school honors college, and I was looking at like a private school that was more fancy. And one of them was like offering, the state school was offering, these are what we can offer you as part of the honors college for research opportunities. And the other one was very much not interested in having undergraduates work in research labs. And so I think part of it is not just the GPA aspect, but it's also what other things are you going to be able to get from the school. I think that for the most part, all of these things are graded on curves. And so you do kind of have to think a little bit about where you're going to be the most successful. And that doesn't necessarily mean the school itself, but maybe, do you feel like being really far away from your family is going to be where you will be most successful? Or do you feel like having a little bit more family support is where you will be most successful? I think there are a lot of like personal aspects. And I do think that if you're in the right place for you, you can be successful there. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but
Definitely. It's a tough question, so I appreciate your take. I do want to just remind students that I am asking sort of panel style questions, but please feel free to unmute or put your questions in the chat at any time. I will continue with mine, but we can interrupt my questions for yours at any point. So sort of a two-ended question here. So what activities, experiences, or decisions help you get into med school, and compare that with what activities, decisions, or experiences helped you succeed in med school? So those like might be the same things, those might be two different things. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Succeed in medical school would have to be, I did a biology and a public health degree as my majors. And so that set me up really well for the kind of just the curriculum in medical school. There were a lot of people there who did more science-based degrees and didn't really have any of the public health part. And then like students who did totally like math degrees, and then they had to do all this biochemistry. Not to say that you can't do that and that you can't be successful doing that. I just was definitely set up well, and I didn't have to put in kind of some of the extra time that they had to put in to be able to do well there. Having experience as a scribe has also been helpful to me. I don't think you have to spend a lot of time doing it, but I think just having a little bit of time. There are plenty of people who start medical school and have very limited medical experience, and so I think just having a little bit of that will help you be successful. In terms of what made my application successful, I think I talked a little bit before about sort of the activities that I did and kind of being well-rounded in terms of research with completed projects, teaching and tutoring, and volunteering. I think in terms of my application specifically, I spent a lot of time on it. You have to write a lot of essays, and you don't want to just have a few drafts. I spent probably 6 months working on my personal statement. Like, it's very much a time commitment. I also think that I also prepared for interviews. I think just being prepared throughout that whole process and really rereading and editing your essays is really important. I was going to say something else, but I think I forgot it. I see a question in the chat about the MCAT. The MCAT has a pretty well-defined like sections, and it's been a number of years since I've taken the MCAT, but if I remember correctly, there's like biology and biochemistry, there's a physics section, and there's a public health, kind of social sciences section, and there's a reading comprehension section. And so in terms of prepping for the MCAT, there are a lot of resources that you can purchase. And I think all of them are very similar in quality. And I think in general, the best way to study is to do practice exams. That's true for medical boards as well. So just practice, 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 and then you can kind of identify where you need to study more, what topics are kind of your weak spots.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the application process, if you don't mind. If you feel comfortable talking about how many schools you applied to maybe, and like how did you decide who to ask for letters of recommendation, sort of things like that.
Yeah, this is really digging back into my memory. I think that I did not apply to very many schools. I think I applied to maybe 12 schools, which at the time was, I think average was 15. So I kind of undershot. But now I would imagine it's a lot higher. Residency applications and like the number needed to apply has drastically increased since COVID. And I don't know about medical school interviews being in person or online, or what the plan going forward for that is. So I would defer to a current counselor, like a medical school counselor at a college, because my assumption would be it's many, many, many more than 12. Like probably, at the time I knew people who had applied to 30. So it's definitely, you cast your net very wide. What was the other part of this question?
Do you want to talk about how you chose those schools, and then also maybe how you went about deciding if there are letter of recommendations involved, how you sort of navigated which of your contacts would be the best, sort of things like that.
Yeah, kind of the year that you apply to medical school, the American Association of Medical Colleges publishes like an online catalog that you pay like $30. Everything costs money, like everything about the process. And so, but it gives you access to kind of a bunch of different statistics about every single school. And you can kind of think about where in the country you want to be. You can think about the cost of the school. You can look at statistics in terms of how does their average GPA and MCAT score compare to yours, which I think the advice when I was applying was you really have to kind of match that. Like if you have a really high MCAT score and a really high GPA, and you're applying to a school that has an average much lower than that, that's like, it's not going to be a great fit. So you're really looking to kind of match where you're at. I also think considering your like in-state school is really important. Generally, that's the like highest chance that you'll have to get in. I don't know if that's the case in every single state, but it's definitely the case in Oregon. So OHSU. And then letters of recommendation. I'm trying to remember. I think I needed, or I can't remember exactly how many I needed. You probably need 4 or so letters of recommendation, with maybe the option of going up to 6 to 7. I think I had maybe 6 letters of recommendation. But it was definitely a wide variety of my research mentors, and then people who I volunteered, kind of my volunteer manager, supervisor, the professor that I was a teaching assistant for, professors who I took classes from, and did well in, and had kind of established a relationship with. And so getting kind of a wide variety there, from kind of representing all these different activities that you're putting on your application, and then having somebody who can kind of speak to you as a person about how they know you in that context.
Awesome. Thank you for digging through your memory for all of that. I do want to let everyone know this is my final question for Bergen. So if you have any last minute questions, please put them in the chat or plan to unmute. Otherwise, we will run out of time for them. So last question. When you were applying to medical school, or now that you're in medical school, what is anything that you wish you would have known sooner or earlier on your path?
Something I would have liked to know sooner. Maybe a little bit of an idea of how long it was going to be, and maybe it's just a little bit more about what I was getting myself into. Neither of my parents are physicians, and so I wasn't coming from like a family in medicine that like really kind of was able to tell me like, oh, you're going to take this 8-hour test, and then you're going to take this 9-hour test, and then you're going to take this 2-day test, and then you're going to pay $1,000 for all of these. And it's just going to keep going on and on and on. And I'm definitely enjoying the journey. But I think maybe knowing a little bit more ahead of time would have been nice. But at the same time, I think I definitely had the personality of I like a challenge. And I think the challenge of getting into medical school and kind of graduating from college and all these different things were kind of the same challenges that you face in medical school and beyond. But kind of since realizing that there are just so many more steps than I had initially seen, I now have talked to more people, and I have a much better idea of what the next 10 years looks like for me, that I maybe didn't quite know 10 years ago. I see some questions in the chat. Do I know of any OHSU clinics that are willing to take student shadowers? I don't know. I know that things in terms of clinical space is different with COVID. I would expect that non-OHSU Portland hospitals might be a better bet, since OHSU has so many student learners. But I think it's mostly just about if there's a doctor who you want to shadow and you're able to reach out to them. That's how I got most of my shadowing experiences. None of them were at OHSU, but I just emailed people, or I dropped off letters at offices and I said, I'd like to shadow. This is a little bit about me. And that was fairly successful. And I think that things are definitely changing in terms of the pandemic. So I would just kind of try and try and get in contact somehow, and see what people say. The worst thing they can say is no. So you just need one yes. And then it says, during the gap years between undergrad and med school, what types of paid jobs can students often get besides research? You can be a scribe. You can, if you're looking for like medical specific experience, which is often what people are doing, if they're not doing research, you can be a scribe. You could be a CNA. Some of these things take a few months to get a certification, like being a medical student or being a medical assistant or being a nursing assistant. Some of them are shorter than others. Being a scribe is like a really short certification process. It probably takes like a week. So a lot of people choose to do that. Besides research, I mean, you can do any job that you want to do. Like, it doesn't have to be medical related. I took 1 year off between undergrad and medical school, and I was a scribe during that time. But I think it's important to remember that I turned in my application the same month I graduated from college, and I had not started that scribe job. And so that was in no way part of my medical school application. So did I need to do it? Could I have done a different job? I have a lot of opinions about scribing companies. They tend to be fairly predatory, and they don't have any type of workers' benefits, and they're not great. I've heard just a lot of really bad stories. My experience was so-so. But I think it's something to keep in mind that they do not pay you very well. They charge clinics a lot of money for you to be there, and they aren't offering a whole lot to your application. So my advice would be to get a job that makes a little bit more money and maybe do a little bit of scribing on the side. But I think you can do tutoring jobs are really great, and they're really fun. And besides research, you can work in a lab without doing research. But it also depends what your degree was in. I have friends who did engineering degrees and they got engineering jobs. I have friends who worked in tech. They did like computer science stuff or something else and got tech jobs. There are a lot of different jobs you could do.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bergen. If there are no last questions in the chat or no one would like to unmute, then I think we've covered just about everything. I want to thank Bergen so much for her time, for being here today on this sunny Thursday when you are very busy with medical school. I want to thank all of our ACE students and the Dr. Rochford's lab who is joining us today. Thank you all for being here. I hope everyone enjoys the sun that has finally decided to come out in Oregon, but stays cool during this weekend. That's supposed to be really hot. So thanks again, Bergen. Really appreciate it. Everyone else, enjoy your Friday tomorrow, and I look forward to hearing about all of your internships soon. Take care. Bye, everyone.